The Saudi Crown Prince, a lawsuit and an alleged murder plot. Mohammed bin Salman is being sued in the US, accused of another attempt to kill a dissident abroad. So, should Saudi activists in exile be worried they risk the same fate as Jamal Khashoggi? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Imran Khan. A man with close ties to the Saudi royal family falls out with the Crown Prince and goes into exile and is targeted with assassination. It sounds like what happened to journalist Jamal Khashoggi, who was murdered at the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in 2018. But this is the story of a former top Saudi intelligence official. Saad Al Jabri says not long after Khashoggi's killing, the Crown Prince sent the same so-called hit squad to kill him in Canada. He's suing Mohammed bin Salman in a US court. And Jabri has a warning for other Saudi dissidents abroad. We'll bring in our guests in a moment, but first, this report from Mike Hanna in Washington, D.C.
Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has been feted in the White House, but now in papers before a Washington, D.C. court, he's alleged to have ordered death squads to torture and assassinate opponents. The case has been brought by a former Saudi intelligence officer, Saad Al Jabri, who alleges the Crown Prince sent a team called the Tiger Squad to Canada to kill him. The court papers say the men were denied entry by suspicious Canadian border guards. This detailed flowchart submitted to the court identifies key members of the assassination squad and others involved, including what are described as forensic technicians skilled in criminal evidence removal. A mirror image of the hit squad that is believed to have murdered and dismembered journalist Jamal Khashoggi in Istanbul in 2018. The case has been brought in terms of legislation that allows non-US citizens to take action in federal courts against foreign individuals who have committed torture and/or extrajudicial killings. In addition, Saad Al Jabri argues that the hit squad assembled in the United States before attempting to enter Canada. Saad Al Jabri's children, now aged 20 and 21, are being held at an undisclosed location in Saudi Arabia as what he describes as human bait to draw him out of hiding. Last month, 4 senators sent a letter to President Trump saying the US had a moral obligation to press Saudi authorities for their release. The president in the past has made clear that regardless of the allegations of human rights violations against the Saudi Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman remains a valued ally and friend. Mike Hanna, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Let's bring in our panel. Joining us from Washington, Imad Harb, Director of Research and Analysis at the Arab Center, Washington, D.C. From Dublin, Abdulaziz Almoayyad, a Saudi human rights activist and a member of the Saudi Diaspora Party. And in New York, Karen Greenberg, Director of the Fordham University School of Law's Center on National Security. A warm welcome to you all. I'd like to begin in Washington, D.C. with Imad Harb. Imad, the court case itself, and let's get into that before we get into the wider regional implications of all of this, but the court case itself, the way it's being presented, the evidence or the suggested evidence is pretty damning. The Canadians turning this team around because they were suspicious of them. We also have precedent with Jamal Khashoggi's murder in the Istanbul consulate. Yet again, MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, is in the frame. Is there any evidence that you can see that would suggest that this case has merit, that this case will go all the way and will see a US courtroom?
Well, thanks for having me first. The idea of a court filing in DC is, as far as I'm concerned, it's a very smart idea. This is where MBS really looks for support or non-support. So it's first of all, it's a good idea to file here. The problem with the idea is if the court itself accepts this case, and whether the court really bases its decision on accepting or rejecting the case on political decisions. In other words, is the court, I do not really want to disparage the American court system, but there are some political pressures, specifically in DC, that may be brought to bear on this court, and whether the judge really decides for or against accepting this. But generally speaking, it's a good idea to file in DC because this is the most impactful kind of place to file such a case.
Karen Greenberg in New York, Mohammed bin Salman, crucial ally of the US, in the frame in a US court. Will it ever see the light of day?
You know, when I first read the complaint, I was very skeptical. But I do think that they lay out something that's very essential in the complaint, which is the intersection with the United States and what this has to do with a crime being allegedly planned here in the United States. And so they lay that out very carefully. And I'm of course, I'm skeptical for the reasons just stated, but I do think it has a chance. Again, I do think this is in a very heightened political context in terms of the administration. But, you know, this complaint really does address head on the Trump administration's posture towards Saudi Arabia and attempts to nullify that as a concern. So it will put the judge in making this decision is going to have to face the fact that that's part of the complaint. And so it is a little bit murkier than I would have thought. And I think there is a possibility, I know it's doubtful, but there is a possibility that this case could go forward.
Abdulaziz Almoayyad in Dublin, Saad Al Jabri has a warning for people living abroad, Saudis living abroad, that this could also happen to people like you, that the Tiger team, as it's been called in the court case, could come after you. Are you concerned?
Now, before Khashoggi's case, and we as Saudi dissidents, we know that the absolute monarchy in Saudi Arabia have always taken extreme measures in fighting any non-violence votes, asking for democracy or fixings in the system. I just want to point one point here about this case. Saad Al Jabri is putting his narrative into challenge by a court. So in this case, we see two important things. Exchange of text messages between Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince, and Saad Al Jabri. And we have the story that should be denied or approved by the Canadian authorities, that the same team or parts of the same team who went to kill Jamal Khashoggi went to the Canadian to Canada to do the same thing. So this is two very important parts that could be collaborated. We have to know that the fight with Mohammed bin Salman or this fascist regime is a fight in different levels. Some of it are a PR fight, and the Saudis spend a lot of money to cover their bad deeds. In this case, the narrative that you find Al Jabri or our ambassador in London saying, or the Saudi government, is Mohammed bin Salman have nothing to do with the Khashoggi case. If it is proven that Mohammed bin Salman have contacted Al Jabri and personally tell him to come back, and when he refused, he sent a hitman group to kill him, that means Mohammed bin Salman was fully aware of the acts of this, as it's called by the Saudi government, rogue agents. So I think this is a very important case in the media and in the Khashoggi case. I hope that the American system can challenge this case, and we then get to hear the story from both sides, Mohammed bin Salman's side and Al Jabri side, and the facts will be known.
It certainly is a very important court case, as you say, Abdulaziz Almoayyad. But Imad, Harb in Washington, D.C., it's actually a slightly different court case than one that we've seen in the past. It used to be that the Saudis went after dissidents and they dealt with them within the country themselves. They didn't like criticism, open criticism of the regime itself. But these are people who were loyalists. This Al Jabri and Mohammed bin Nayef, who was the darling of the US security establishment for a very long time, is actually seen as somebody quite loyal to the US government. This is Mohammed bin Salman not just cleaning house, but taking the entire thing over, isn't it?
He sure is, obviously. Al Jabri or Mohammed bin Nayef or any other person in positions of authority, we do know that he is after any challenger within the royal family itself. He is definitely trying to clean the slate, so to speak, before his ascendance to the throne. The Allegiance Council, last time the Allegiance Council really did anything was basically not be very, very happy with Mohammed bin Salman becoming crown prince anyway. So he is definitely out to get rid of any objection or any basically challenge to his authority. The problem with all of this is it's not that it's really bad reputation for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is purportedly the leader of the Islamic Sunni world. So it's really shameful for the country to really be put on this kind of footing. The question is, if he really wants to become king, why would he want to start his reign with all these people who are supposedly, who actually definitely want the good thing for the kingdom, and who are opposed to some tendencies in the way he does things. So it's very unfortunate that he should go this way. But then again, like friend Abdulaziz said, this is despotism. I mean, they do not want anybody. He doesn't want anybody to really say anything opposite to what he really wants them to say.
Karen Greenberg in New York, a lot of what we're seeing here seems to me and to people I've spoken to that there is a battle going on between different forces in Saudi Arabia, but it's taking place within the US. It's taking place within US newspapers, now the US court system, and it seems to be between people who are very close to each other at one point, but now are fighting each other for the attractions of the White House. And one friend of mine who is very close actually to the Saudi, I understand Saudi Arabia very well, liken this to the idea that actually what is going on right now is to put pressure on the White House and on Donald Trump to pick a side. Would you characterize that as being right?
I don't think that's far-fetched. I think it's wider than the White House. I think it's the White House and the issue of the ties, who our intelligence community is tied to. But I think there's an underlying story here that fits into what you're talking about, which is the fear of what Al Jabri has to say and what he knows. And one of the issues seems to be a fear of the influence that what he knows could play on top officials in the intelligence community, and then they could pressure the White House or the White House directly. And I think we can't minimize that when we talk about what's actually going on here. I think you're right. This has everything to do with the relationship between the United States and Saudi Arabia. That's why the complaint mentioned so many times the influence that the Saudis have on the White House, the relationships of the president and his son-in-law with the Saudis, the fact that on his inaugural trip abroad he went to Saudi Arabia, and more. And so I think that it's another wrinkle in that. But there's another part of this that is not just political, and that has to do with what it means to threaten a foreign national's life using the territory and planning for it in the United States. And this is not a minor thing. And the details in this complaint are rather frightening, actually, in terms of the network, the numbers of people, the amount of plans, the individuals that were pulled out by covert Saudi agents to talk to them and Al Jabri's family in Boston and elsewhere. And I think part of this complaint, politics aside, is an attempt to shed light and to use light as protection, to say, this is what's going on. Now it's in a court, or at least we're trying to get it to go forward in a court. Here it is in the light of day as a way of protection against what happened to Jamal Khashoggi. I think that dimension has to be mentioned.
Abdulaziz, I will come to you in just a second, but I want to go to Imad Harb. Imad, a lot of these court cases haven't had huge amounts of success. Let's take a look at a couple of them. You had the Arab Bank, and there were a bunch of activists in the US who were trying to sue the Arab Bank because Hamas had accounts there. We also had post 9/11, a group of people trying to freeze Saudi Arabian assets within the US to try and get that to court. These cases didn't go anywhere. It is very difficult for these types of cases to be heard. Do you have any confidence that this will see a court?
Well, again, as I said before, it depends on whether the court accepts the case or not. What I know is I think it's despite the fact that Al Jabri's case is really very, very important. He's trying to really make a point, not only to defend himself, but also make a point regarding Saudi Arabia's foreign policy or its policy against with its citizens. I think the more important one is the court of public opinion. I mean, Mohammed bin Salman is running against a very, very tough situation in the United States. Yes, he does have the White House. He has people in the White House, and Professor Greenberg is right about talking about these people, or maybe it was Abdulaziz who said that they're fighting in to get the administration to support them. But then there is Congress. In Congress, there is a large sentiment among both Democrats and Republicans, more Democratic than Republican, but that Mohammed bin Salman is not necessarily doing the right thing, and there is a lot of legislation against what he's doing. And at the same time, we also have to think ahead a little bit. After November 3rd, if Joe Biden is elected, by January 2021, there might be a different foreign policy orientation in the White House. So he probably should really try to re-examine his cards, so to speak, see where he is going, if he really can go this far, and if he is not really worried about what happens after January, then all bets are off. But then again, Saudi Arabia has a lot of good relations with the United States. A lot of sectors in the United States really depend on a good relationship with Saudi Arabia. So, Mohammed bin Salman and the White House, by the way, should really be careful about how this thing proceeds.
Now, Imad, the reason I asked you, I really pushed the point about whether it will see a courtroom again, is because I want a reaction from Abdulaziz Almoayyad. Is Saad Al Jabri now somebody who you could partner up with, who is an effective ally for you in forming a wide-ranging opposition to Mohammed bin Salman and the regime in Saudi Arabia? Could you be bedfellows?
I would like first to stress the point that Jamal Khashoggi, when he was killed in Turkey, he wasn't calling for a democracy in Saudi Arabia clearly, right? Al Jabri isn't in any way a dissident or in opposition with the Saudi regime. And you can see that from the messages that the escalation is coming from Mohammed bin Salman. You can understand that if your children are being used as a bait to bring you, that you will do whatever you can in your hand to fight back. So I think in Al Jabri case, as in other cases, and the Mohammed bin Salman strategy, how he deals with things, he escalates and he tried to use shock to get a quick victory, and it's not turning up well for him.
But Abdulaziz, let me ask the question again in a different way. Isn't my enemy's enemy my friend? Surely you have somebody who wants to really criticize Mohammed bin Salman, and you have a cause as well. You might make uneasy partners, but certainly there is a common cause there, no?
Like philosophically, not always the enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's a starting point. But yes, Saudi Arabia have a very big problem. The absolute monarchy, as we can see from what's happening right now, and the stories from the regime about the ex-regime or the ex-royal, the previous royal, the previous king, that it is not working. For me, I wish that I would support any effort to bring an end to the racist, fascist regime in Saudi Arabia in a form that bring voting to people and give people the right to have checks and balances in their rulers. And Mr. Al Jabri case, he's like anybody else. He should be. If he have any crimes in his past dealing in Saudi Arabia, he should answer to them. But I don't think this is what's happening. I think Mohammed bin Salman is chasing all the enemies because he knows how weak he is. He knows that he got to power. He wasn't it's a plan. It was something that happened in the time because of his father being a king and his relations with Kushner and the American, at least in his eyes. He knows that's how he gets in power. That's why he's afraid somebody else could come and challenge him. At the end of the day, as Saudi people, we ask from everybody who have a conscience and pragmatically, Saudi Arabia is going into a very big trouble if this continues, because the way Mohammed bin Salman is running the country is going to disaster. And this is not good for nobody. So there is a lot of powers in Saudi Arabia. Some heroes in jails are asking for people representation, and they think it's an effort that should be pushed from everybody who have conscience or a moral backbone.
Imad, Harb, I want you to react to this. Karen, we will come back to you in just a second, but we are running out of time. This highlights particularly what Abdulaziz has been saying. It highlights a key issue that, yes, you can criticize Mohammed bin Salman, but he has been effective in silencing dissident voices and getting rid of anybody that's in his way in taking power. Effectively, he's silenced the opposition. He might have done it in a very, some would say, brutal in the case of Jamal Khashoggi, but he has effectively silenced the opposition. That puts him in a better position than anybody else.
Of course, yeah. I mean, this is what power is, right? If you have power, you use it to your advantage. And a political system that depends on absolute power and absolutism and the centrality of the person, not the institution, obviously, he will have to do that. The problem is Saudi Arabia has had a history since 1932. Saudi Arabia has had a history of consultation. It has been a consultative kind of kingdom for decision making. It is with Mohammed bin Salman is becoming much less so. It is the rule of the person. So in that sense, how many dissidents will there be, sidelined, liquidated, killed, like Jamal Khashoggi, put in jail, whatever? How many of these do we need to keep going to discover that this really is not really in the good service of the kingdom or the royal family? The royal family has not necessarily been extremely nice regarding democracy, and Abdulaziz is right about that. But then, there is a way of.
Imad, sorry, we are running out of time, and I would like to get some thoughts from Karen Greenberg. Now, Karen, is this court system, the judicial system in the US, able to cope with all of the, let's use the word skullduggery that we've heard, all of the politics that involves prosecuting a senior member of the Saudi royal family? Can the judicial system cope?
The judicial system could cope with what it has to. The question is, can it cope with pressures that are put on it from above, inside the country, from the White House or the Department of Justice, even as we've seen recently in the Flynn case? And can they cope? They have the tools to cope if they want to. Yes, as you allude to, there is the issue of sovereign immunity for Mohammed bin Salman, but whether or not the case goes forward could be pivotally important. And I just want to emphasize one final thing, which is that this complaint is about the extensive network of currying favor among NGOs, with American companies, with American foundations, to create a culture where turning against the Saudis will be very important, that it's deeply rooted, not just politically, but culturally. And I think this may impact the decision of the court to go forward.
I want to thank all our guests, Imad Harb, Abdulaziz Almoayyad and Karen Greenberg. And thank you too for watching. You can see the programme again anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And you can also join the conversation on Twitter. We are at AJ Inside Story. From me, Imran Khan, and the entire team here in Doha, bye for now.